Welcome everybody to this meeting of the CAN Forum. One or two new faces, particular welcome to you. I hope you find the meeting useful and interesting. Our theme tonight is engaging local businesses in climate action. So the focus is back after COP26 on local community action. And that obviously is an important way forward as we move forward on climate change actions. The meeting tonight is in three main parts. We're going to start off with a presentation from Jen Adams from Nailsworth CAN, who's going to talk to us about the Nailsworth Green Directory. And Jen is going to take questions immediately after her presentation because she has to depart just before 7:30. Then in the second part of the meeting, we'll hear from Nina Scubala, Head of Climate Strategy at Business West, who's going to talk about her organization's Trading to Net Zero campaign and how it helps businesses tackle climate change. We'll then hear from James Clark, who is Director of Marketing at the Severn Wye Energy Agency. And James is going to talk about the Target 2030 programme and SWER's advice and funding to local businesses on energy efficiency improvements. We'll then have a little mini panel discussion with James and Nina based on your Q&A. And then the final part of the meeting will be the traditional roundup of news and updates before we close the meeting. House rules for those of you who have not attended one of these meetings before. It's microphones off, please, unless you're invited to speak. That will help everybody hear the meeting properly. If you'd like to speak, to ask a question of a speaker or to make a contribution under the news and updates section of the meeting, please use the hands up icon under reactions at the foot of your screen and we'll bring you in at the appropriate time. You can also, of course, use the chat facility to make comments and observations as we go and to leave useful information. And I should just remind everybody that we are recording the meeting for the purposes of making good note and to enable those who are unable to attend tonight to watch the meeting at their leisure. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jen Adams. Jen Adams is our first speaker who will be speaking on the Nailsworth Green Directory. It's over to you, Jen.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Fred. I'm just going to paste the link into the chat for the Nailsworth Green Directory in case people want to have a look just while we're talking about it. So I've just pasted that into the chat. And is it okay to share my screen?
Go for it. It should be enabled.
Okay, excellent. Okay, just bear with me.
That's looking good.
Yeah, great. I'm just going to go into present mode. Okay. So can everyone see this? Excellent. So the Nailsworth Green Directory, it's currently hosted on the Nailsworth CAN website. Sorry, one moment. I've just got a 4-year-old right here. I'm so sorry. Okay, we just have to play it without the voice. It's been set up about a year ago, I would say, on the website. We have it's just one page currently for all the businesses. Hopefully you can see it as I'm talking. If you scroll down, you'll see there's different categories for the different types of businesses and organizations that we have.
Jen, I think we're stuck on your first slide, so I think you have to move the slides along.
Yeah, I haven't moved it along yet.
Okay, sorry. Do apologize.
That's okay. That's okay. And hopefully you can also see towards the top of the page, there's a button for if you're a business owner, you can click on that, which takes you to a second page that we have for businesses to either sort of submit themselves as a possible listed business, as well as other resources that businesses can use. So I'll just start with how the directory came about. it was actually my mum, who is a member of a transition group in East London. She set up a green directory in her local area. Hopefully you'll be able to, I think Fred's going to distribute these slides after the meeting, so you'll be able to have a look at the Leytonstone Green Directory. I thought it was just such a simple and lovely idea to celebrate the local businesses that were really making an effort to be more sustainable. And it took off from there, really. Once we had a discussion at Nailsworth CAN, everyone was really supportive about doing the idea, doing this locally in Nailsworth. So how do we get businesses on board? Most of our businesses, it's happened as a result of myself or other Nailsworth CAN members walking into the shop and just having a chat with the owner, if they're there, and asking them about what they're doing. Most of the businesses were quite obvious in terms of, we knew, for example, that there's a health food shop in Nailsworth that has a lot of ecologically sound items and refill stations and so on. So some of them were immediately obvious. Some of the other businesses, like Betty and BT's Vintage Interiors, that kind of that hit us later on as an idea. Of course, it's going to be green because it's secondhand furniture, but we hadn't clocked that straight away. And it was even better when we spoke to Helen, the owner. She was really keen to give advice to people on how they could restore furniture, as well as she let us know that a lot of the products that she uses to restore the furniture is non-produced locally, so that really fitted with what we felt the Green Directory was all about. She also wanted to be involved in our other scheme, replanting the trees on the W, so she was going to donate to that, which all fitted really well. So she came on board in that way. There was a couple of other businesses that approached us with their own eco credentials, and we agreed with them, and they became listed then. So as I said, some of the businesses, it was really obvious from the start that they should be listed in the directory. We're so lucky in Nailsworth to have 2 B Corp businesses. I don't know if everyone's heard of B Corp. Nod if you have. If you haven't, it's really, really interesting. Do have a look. But it's a really stringent way for a business to prove that they are doing everything they can to be sustainable, and also to support the local community. So we have 2 B Corp businesses, Beeswax Wraps and Hobbs Bakery are B Corp businesses. So straight away they were on board, and they were really supportive of the Green Directory idea, as well as they were really open to sharing their expertise with other businesses locally, which we haven't taken them up on that yet, apart from Beeswax did do a talk with us about how they came about and their approach, which was really nice. But we're hoping to do more with those 2 businesses going forward. Other businesses had completed the Surfers Against Sewage program to work on reducing their plastic use. For example, the plant shop, what's it called? The plant shop in Junglist had completed that program, and they did things like changing their suppliers to suppliers that use less plastic in their goods. So that felt really important to support any businesses that had gone through that program. Other criteria, we think about is whether the products are locally sourced. And also whether the packaging is plastic free. So the picture you see here is Marrow's. Their fruit and veg is not 100%, but mostly plastic free. And we had a little bit of a debate about this. And this is where I think it becomes quite tricky when you're deciding whether a business should be listed or not, because some of their products would be air freighted to the wholesaler in Bristol, which didn't fit the criteria of it being locally sourced, but they had great credentials in terms of selling loose products with no packaging. So we're always with the Green Directory trying to be positive, and it felt important to recognize what businesses are doing rather than penalizing businesses for what they're not doing, and to support them to do more. And Marrow's, this fruit and veg outlet, is actually recently saying that they are going to start working with local farms. So they are moving in the right direction even further, which is really great to hear. So we feel that by celebrating successes, businesses are more likely to take further action. There's also a couple of transport businesses on there, the e-bike shop and a bike repair shop. So what have been some of our successes? We felt that businesses asking to join was a huge success. It was nice to know that they were aware of what we were doing. And as I mentioned, one of the B Corp businesses did give us a talk. And I think we want to build on this idea of networking between the businesses locally, and maybe hosting some events where business owners can meet and share ideas and approaches. Using photographs actually to bring the businesses to life, I think, was a really important part of making it really visual and attractive to people. And we had these signs made, which I don't know if any of you have spotted around Nailsworth, to kind of bring a sense of cohesion to the project. And the businesses really liked the signs as well, which meant they were more likely to display them. The signs were made as sustainably as possible as well. Some of the challenges in setting up the directory, as I mentioned earlier, some of the businesses, we had a debate about whether they should be listed or not. And I think not having the criteria formally written down is a challenge, but actually it fits with our approach of celebrating success. We feel that if we start writing down these really strict rules for who can and can't be listed in the Green Directory, we start having to play a role that as a community group, we don't feel it's our place. We're there to celebrate successes. We're not there to judge whether a business should or should not be penalized for things they're not doing. Having said that, there have been some businesses that we have kind of talked about, and we felt we really can't list. I'm going to give an example. I think, is it Tesco and Stroud have some recycling, quite a few recycling points, but we didn't feel that as a business, Tesco is, well, firstly, it's not a local business, but it's not doing enough in our view to qualify. So whilst we might list those recycling points as recycling points, we don't feel we can list that business as such. So how do we promote it? A mixture of social media. So we feature each of the businesses. Every couple of weeks, we'll feature a business and celebrate them on our social media. We have the signs in the shops, and we also had an article in Nailsworth News. Finally, next steps. We do have a next wave of businesses prepared that we're going to be approaching. We need to list the charity shops because they're really important. And we want to start listing community groups as well. And as I mentioned, we want to host some events for businesses. Another third aspect that I'm really excited about is whether we can encourage businesses to and support them to adopt or adapt their practices. For example, there's a tailor in Nailsworth, and I'm really keen to speak to them about whether they would be happy to start repairing jeans. I saw something in, I think it was The Guardian, that it's becoming increasingly, there's a demand for people to have their clothes repaired, and I'm really keen to see whether they'd like to start doing that and whether we could help promote that. Another scheme that I've heard of is a community support for businesses to help them buy things like loose containers so that they can start selling things loose. So, for example, if there's a local pet shop, customers can donate money to the pet shop, but to help them to buy whatever they need to buy to help selling things without packets, like the big containers. And then the idea is that the customers can use, so say they donate £20 in over the next few months, they'd be able to get that £20 back at that shop, but they're giving that initial investment to help that shop. And that's a scheme. I'm going to make sure Fred gets the link to this scheme because I'm really excited about that idea and I think it could work. So that's the Nailsworth Green Directory. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if anyone has any questions.
Thank you very much, Jen. That's great, an inspiring initiative. And if people do have questions, please do use the hands up icon under reactions. Perhaps I could take chair's prerogative and ask you a question. Jen, if you were advising a group who wanted to start from scratch in setting up a green directory, is there anything that you would do differently or advise that they'd be done differently to the way that you've done it?
I think I really liked what a scheme in Tetbury. I don't know if other people saw this. I think it was Greening Tetbury, and the shops similarly had signs in them. And it said specifically what that business was doing so that people walking past could read, what the business was doing. And I thought that was a really great idea. To sort of show that in a very public way, not just on a website. So I think that's one thing I would have done differently, or might still do. We might still do that in the future.
Okay, so is there anybody else with a question for Jen? I think, Nina, did I see a question from you which asked what the directory's social media handles were? Have I got that right?
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's Nailsworth CAN, so Nailsworth Climate Action Network. That's where we promote the Green Directory. So we haven't set it up as a separate entity to Nailsworth CAN. For example, we haven't set up a separate website, and we haven't set up separate handles on social media. So we're promoting it through the existing Nailsworth CAN channels.
Richard reminds us that you need to, I think you haven't completed the process of unsharing the screen, Jen.
Oh.
Then we'll be able to see everybody.
Thanks, Richard. Richard's always helping me.
There we go. There we go. And there was a question from Sam in chat about whether or not you've had much reaction from shoppers themselves. No,
it's really hard to get that, actually. I'd love to hear. And maybe that's something that we need to think about at Nailsworth CAN, how we get that feedback, or how we find out that people are noticing these signs. We can track the visitor numbers to that specific page on the website. So I guess that's one way we can monitor how much the directory itself is being used.
Okay, thank you, Jen. And question from Simon Pickering: have you linked in any way to FGR Carbon Zero Football Club?
No, we haven't. That would be, then that could be a good one for our next wave of. Is that a community?
It's Forest Green. It is Forest Green Rovers. It is the football club that's in League Division 2, and doing quite well at the moment.
Yes, no, I'm aware of them as a team. I'm just yeah, I think that sounds like something we could list in the next wave.
Okay.
I also suggested Kung Fu Accounting. They're from Nailsworth, aren't they? They're a Carbon Zero accounting company.
Oh, really? Yeah, that sounds brilliant. Excellent.
And if you want a speaker for an event, the guy who runs that is a really good speaker.
Oh, that's great to know.
Absolutely passionate about carbon accounting.
Oh, brilliant. Did you say carbon counting or carbon accounting?
Carbon accounting as well as accounting. He's called Kung Fu Accounting. They're basically an accountancy firm.
Brilliant.
But they are carbon zero.
Yeah, so the next wave, we would like to list things that businesses that are not public facing, as in don't have a shop. So architects and accountants, and yeah, that sounds brilliant. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, time perhaps for another question. Richard, you've got your hand up.
Well, it's just reinforcing something. Another project that Jenny is out and out star, but you know, in addition to this project, she is one of the people leading our tool library, or no, what do we call it? Library of Things, sorry. And in terms of the engagement thing, we're getting huge hits on that, aren't we, Jen?
Yeah.
But that's because you've actually gone out and sought people to volunteer for a you know, for a dialogue, for a kind of actually surveying what they think, and that has got a lot of traction. And I just wonder, because the other thing is a consumer thing, it may be there is traction, but it isn't quite so visible because there isn't a way of people recording their engagement in a sense. But I think the things that people, I think the general message is that things that people feel as though they can engage in and are practical and aren't too abstract do gain a lot of interest. So, yeah. Sorry, that was just an observation.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Jen, I think we're probably going to be able to let you go away and catch breath between your meetings.
Thank you so much, Fred.
We're very grateful for the talk. It was very interesting.
Thanks for having me.
And our next speaker is Nina Scubala from the Business West, Head of Climate Change at Business West, who's going to talk to us about the work of her agency. Nina, are you ready and raring to go?
Yes, I am. Thanks very much. First of all, thanks very much for inviting me to join your meeting this evening. As I was introduced, I'm the head of climate strategy at Business West, and I've been there for about 10 years. I initially joined as an environmental advisor, working predominantly with SMEs, helping them to identify opportunities where they could reduce carbon across their business. And in more recent years, I've worked more with the leadership team and some of the corporate entities, predominantly in the Bristol and the West of England area, on helping them then to play an active role in shaping the development and the long-term goals and aspirations of the region. More recently, I've moved across to work right across our region on what we are going to be doing on climate change. For those of you who might not already know Business West, we are the Chamber of Commerce in Gloucestershire, West of England, Bristol, Bath, and in Wiltshire. And we work right down the peninsula as well with all of the other chambers of commerce. We also deliver a whole load of different business support projects as well. So we deliver the Department of International Trade contracts in the area. We also help businesses to innovate, running the Innovate contract. And we have skills team helping companies to grow and develop their staff. We recently ourselves became a B Corp and are climate neutral as well. We do that through an organisation called Ecology. And earlier in the year, we went ahead and declared a climate crisis as well. And that followed talking to organisations in your area of business declares. It really made us think about what it is that an organisation like ours can do. So we have 200 staff as well. So it's thinking about, you know, what can an organisation like ours that works with 25,000 businesses right across the peninsula, how do we use our connections, our standing within the business community to make a meaningful change on climate change? So I'm just going to talk for the next few moments about our approach to how are you going to be addressing climate change as an organisation. And given that, you know, COP happened last week as well, I'll just touch on a few things I think businesses can really take home from COP. So just to start then, our own approach is looking at, so we're trying to do three things. The first thing is looking at how do we mainstream net zero? And the way that we look at this is that businesses are all on a ladder. So we all want to get businesses increasing what they are doing in terms of climate change. So it's really important that we encourage businesses to consider what they are doing and put it on their radar. So a lot of our messaging this year has been to highlight good practice, and we're using very much the same approach as what the speaker before me was using, that encouraging, being very celebratory about things that businesses are doing. And, you know, we've made quite a bit, I think that we are starting to make a bit of a difference in this space. So, you know, working across our events program right across the region, I think we've worked with at least 1,000 businesses have come along, and they've heard myself or some of my colleagues talking about what it is to being net zero, or on that trajectory towards net zero, why it's important for their business and what are the business benefits for them to do that. We also use COP really as a platform to really make an impact, or make it really as a platform to make sure that businesses were aware of why this was a business issue. So one of the things that we did was working with the Black Interns Project in Bristol, and also with some interns from UWE. We created a 26 for COP26 blog series. And in that series, we demonstrated what Business West itself was doing in terms of climate change. We also highlighted, I put one of the links in the chat earlier about the B Corps, and we wanted to highlight what some of the B Corps were in the region. We wanted to highlight what businesses could do in terms of nature across the region, and also what they could be doing to reduce, to start their journey on climate change. And our approach has very much been, it's celebrating good practice. And we're not, rather than going just highlighting the best practice. The approach doing that, we really want to make businesses feel, no matter what size they are, what sector that they are, that everyone is able to start that journey. And if they have started that journey, that they can go further. So that's been sort of an underlying theme of what we've been doing. And those of you who know my counterpart up in Gloucestershire, Ian Mean, he did a session with, I think Simon Pickering's on the call here, with him, and with Kung Fu Accounting, and with Dale. So really using some of those leaders in this sector to help others along the way. The second way that we're looking to do this is by using our services and our membership to really support and encourage businesses along the route. And the way that we've approached this is working in partnership and collaboration, so that we can have, you know, be as broad and as open as possible. So some of the partnerships that we've been involved with is with the Bristol Green Capital Partnership. So I chair one of the groups there, which is the Climate Leaders Group. Now that's a group of businesses that are already on that route to net zero by 2030. And it invites the practitioners within those organisations and gives them an opportunity to compare what they are doing, share best practice, and also, more importantly, share some of those challenges. And what we try to do in that group is identify some of the common issues that they might have. And it's a really good group in that we've got some corporates in it, some SMEs, very diverse sectors, and the idea of bringing businesses together who might not ordinarily talk to each other each day. It's about then thinking it gives that person or that person in that organisation the space to think about how they might approach that challenge in a different way. And we're able to use the learnings from those sessions then back into how we might work with other organisations who are not quite at that stage yet. We're also one of the partners in a climate action programme as well, which is being delivered by the Green Capital Partnership. And this is something that's not just available for businesses in the west of England, it's available for business everywhere. And they have workshops where they will look at how a business might look at how they might draw up a carbon reduction plan, how they might engage with their staff. And what they've done then is recorded those sessions and created very, very simple guides. So if a business, particularly SMEs, can't afford to take time out of the day to attend workshops and seminars, it means that they can access that resource at a time where it suits them. And we've also partnered with another organisation called Action Net Zero. So in Bristol and Bath, there's the clean air zones is coming into, well, it's already come into place in Bath, but it's coming into place in Bristol, and the sale of petrol and diesel vehicles are going. So we can see this is a real driver for businesses to start thinking about how they're going to travel differently. So in that campaign, it's all about how do we show businesses what is possible with an EV, how they can charge most effectively, and how do they take advantage of some of the incentives that are around at the moment. It's not to say that we are just backing EV. We've also got another campaign as well, looking at rolling out cycle infrastructure right across the city in some of our urban areas as well. But we just see that this is a good moment in time to back that sort of campaign. Our standard thing that we also do at Business West is that we have innovation contracts and DIT, so that's Department of International Trade contracts as well. And what's really amazing at this time at Business West is that we've got so many experts in net zero, energy, climate change within each of those groups. So it means that businesses that are coming to us for other business issues, it means, or they're in the EGS sector, they're able to work with somebody who really understands this topic. And we've been rolling out training to all of our staff as well, so that they too understand what it means to net zero and some of the things that they really need to be talking about with their clients as well. And next year, we'll be rolling out some of our own business support services. And the first one is going to be looking at how do we help businesses just to begin measuring their carbon footprint. The third thing that we do is looking at being an insightful organisation, credible and a champion. And the way that we do this is trying to understand where businesses are on that journey to net zero, so that we can best represent them when we're talking to stakeholders, and that we are able to give businesses a voice in this area. So we've been able to do this by taking part in roundtables. We've got a planning, transport and climate change group, so we can tap into some of the expertise of some of our members, particularly in the sort of the transport and the built environment space. And I've also got a climate advisory group as well, and which is, again, it's really valuable when you've got businesses that come together, that we can sort of tap into some of their expertise and think about what works. You know, some of them work in other cities or other parts of the countries, and there's lots of lessons that we can harness and take in from that. Earlier in the year, we took part in a survey, and I recognise some of the names here as well as some of the participants in that survey. It was part of our usual economic survey, so it was really good in that it wasn't biased towards companies that were maybe more likely to be doing things on climate change. But what was really interesting, and I was going to ask a few questions here for people sort of maybe interact. I've been talking for a while, so I'd like in the chat if people can start thinking about, we asked the question, how what percentage of businesses now consider climate change to be an issue, a business issue. And I thought I was asking everyone to put a figure in the chat as to what they think the response would have been as a percentage. There we go. So we've got an 80 there from Stonehouse, only just 40 from Brixton, 50, 80, 60 from Greg, 75, 20. So Jane Robinson, you had the figure right. It was 70% of businesses said that they thought that business, they consider climate change to be a business issue. So one of the other questions that we asked them is, you know, in the next 12 months, out of that section that said that climate change is a business issue, what percentage do you think are going to be doing something about it in the next 12 months? So I'll ask you to put a figure in the chat there for me again. So I've got a 40 from Andy, 75, an optimistic one there from Adrian, 90 from Sam, very optimistic, Jane's saying 40. So the actual figure was 50% of businesses said that they were going to be doing something in the next 12 months. And we are asked these businesses, what is it that's, you know, what is the barrier? What's their driver? So what was really interesting to find out was that the main driver for businesses taking any action on climate change is actually the business owner's own values, followed by what their customers or their clients, and then what their staff were expecting. What came down quite low actually was the idea that they were going to have any cost savings from doing this sort of activity. Now, what was holding businesses back was the cost of doing the implementation, competing priorities. So bear in mind the period when we were asking this is when the economy was opening up post-lockdown. And we've also seen problems with supply chains, staffing. So that's not too surprising. And the other thing is it's the idea of not having maybe the expertise in, you know, themselves. So it's great to see that, you know, there's groups like the one in Nailsworth where you can harness some of the expertise within organisations. So we, as an organisation, we use that sort of intel so we can make sure that we can speak to, I think Rachel Brain's on the thing, but we can talk to the various councils and make sure that they, you know, when they're doing their plans on climate change and thinking about what we're asking businesses to do, we can come in and kind of give a bit of a reality check or saying, yes, this is where businesses are going, or this is where they might be having some problems. So it's a, you know, hopefully the idea of having this sort of intel is that we're able to accelerate that progress to net zero right across the region. And next year, what I'm really going to be looking at is looking at some of the supply chains of some of the emerging or growing businesses in net zero, so that, you know, we are best equipped across the region to create jobs, create prosperity, and create really thriving business in that sector. So just moving on to, you know, what's happened at COP, I think the main things that we're going to be going back out to businesses and telling them what's coming from COP is the idea that that 1.5 target is live, and that is if businesses aren't thinking about how they're going to be getting that or what they're going to be doing to that, then they really are going to be missing the mark. The second thing that we're going to be sort of telling businesses as well is the idea that fossil fuels are on their way out, so they really need to be starting to plan how they take themselves off the reliance on fossil fuels. And where the growth, there's lots of growth, it's looking at some of the renewables, hydrogen, fusion, and that nature, and how do we restore the climate. One of the other things I'll be feeding back to the business community as well is that idea of this needs to be a really diverse, we need to have lots more diverse voices, and this whole sector and this whole movement needs to be a lot more inclusive. And the last bit as well is, whilst at the moment we are very celebratory of any business and encouraging businesses to come forward on what they're doing in terms of climate change, there needs the idea of greenwash, and as consumers and people start understanding carbon and understand their knowledge in this area, greenwash is going to be an area that businesses really need to be able to demonstrate and prove what they're doing. So I'm just going to come to an end there, and I really hope that, you know, you've all got a better feel of what we do at Business West, and that you feel hopeful that businesses in this part of the world do understand what that climate change is an issue that they need to act upon, and that for many of them, they are really seeing that this is an opportunity as well for them. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you very much, Nina. And it's very heartening to hear that climate change action has been taken right to the heart of your organisation. So please, people, hold on to your questions for Nina, and we'll come back to that. But first, we're just going to move on to James Clark from Severn Wye Energy Agency, who's going to talk to us about the Target 2030 programme and the work that he does with businesses.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Nina, for keeping us off PowerPoint for a little while. That's been a nice rest. I'm going to ruin it, I'm afraid. I'm really sorry about that. But yeah, I'm James. I'm from Severn Wye Energy Agency. Some of you may be familiar with us and familiar with our work already. We are a local sustainability charity just down the road, actually in Hynham, the other side of Gloucester. But we are working across Gloucestershire at the moment on a business energy efficiency programme called Target 2030. I will just put up my screen now so you can see it. Yeah, you may be really familiar with quite a lot of our practical work. So it might be that you know us from our fuel poverty alleviation work. We've been doing that for 20 years in partnership with Stroud District Council in the district and across Gloucestershire. We've also been working very strongly on energy efficiency retrofit in buildings, particularly in residential buildings and communities, but as I'm going to speak to you today, in businesses as well. So we're currently using the dregs, the last few pounds we can get out of the EU, to help businesses to save some carbon, reduce their energy reliance, and become more energy efficient, and obviously therefore do something that's positive for their environmental impact and to change some of that. We're about 4 years into about 4 years into a just over 5-year program. We're basically working with Gloucestershire SMEs, and we're offering three things. We're offering an energy audit, an energy survey of a business's property and their premises. We're then, from that, we're understanding what they use their energy for, what their bills are, and where they have opportunities for saving that. And then we give them a really quite in-depth report that looks at everything that their business uses in terms of energy on site, and helps them understand how they might improve that, how they might reduce the energy that they use, and some of the low-hanging fruit and some of the stretch fruit that they might want to consider when they're making those changes. And finally, the final sort of part to that puzzle is that if a business wants to make some changes and wants to improve their premises and improve the energy efficiency, we have 30% grant funding towards that for SMEs that qualify. So I'll take you through just a few slides that will help draw out some of the insights from our program so far, maybe give you a bit of food for thought for what businesses that you are familiar with might stand to benefit from this sort of program, and to give you a sense of what's left, because actually we're burning through this money pretty quickly at the moment. We have, I'll speak to that in a moment, but we've got a target of 345 businesses that we should be working with across Gloucestershire over this programme. We've only got 51 spaces left, and actually that's at last count maybe a month ago, so it's below 50 by now. We've got about £160,000 left in the grant funding pot that we have to distribute to businesses wanting to make those carbon saving changes. We've already distributed about £1.1 million into Gloucestershire businesses to help them to decarbonise a little bit. It's worth me mentioning at this point that when it comes to Stroud District, we've invested about £250,000 into Stroud businesses around the district. So that goes to about, that's £250,000 of about £770,000 worth of improvements that businesses have made in the district. So this is some significant work that's going on for some businesses. So that's the state of play at the moment, and we want to achieve another 500 tons in carbon savings. This is annual savings as part of that program. We're going to smash through that barrier, I would like to think. I don't think, and then we're going to carry on. We're not going to stop there. Just so that you've got a sense of who we're working with, basically this funding is to support the smaller business. It's to support the SME who might not otherwise have that finance to support them to make some of these changes. Nina mentioned that one of the biggest barriers to businesses, of course, is the upfront capital costs, and this is where we try and step in for a small business. There are a few sectors that we can't support, and that's largely to do with the fact that they get public sector support from other areas as part of that industry, but not many of these are a massive factor. Fisheries not a massive factor in Stroud district, but there is a few exceptions to the rule, and one of the ones that we come up against, I suppose, the most is perhaps agriculture, primary agriculture, farmers and that sort of thing. We have been able to support farms where there's been, I don't know, a B&B that's on site and it's a separate part of the business that's hospitality or something like that. But we can't support direct primary agriculture businesses, people like that. So effectively, there's two parts to the service that we provide for a business. The first one is once they've signed up, we take a look at their bills, understand how they use their energy, even just as from at the desk, our business energy advisors can do that. We'll discuss with them what they want to do, and then we'll come around and we'll have a little look at their premises. We'll understand, count all the light bulbs. We'll talk to them about what they do day to day, what their working hours are, the sort of business that they run, how they rely on energy, and get an idea of what that business is doing. And then from that, our business energy advisor will go away, have a real look at what they could do, have a look at the cost savings that might be involved in that, have a look at the carbon savings that are on offer, what are the things that are going to save the most carbon, to help them plan out what improvements they might choose to make if they decide to do so. And of course, we strongly encourage our businesses to do that. The whole point of this is to help businesses to make those difficult sometimes decisions, and help them to make changes that might cost a little bit of money, but might be worthwhile in terms of their environmental impact and their progress towards carbon neutrality or net zero. And as Nina mentioned earlier, businesses that we worked with in the early stages of this program, 2017, 2018, 2019, they were motivated primarily by cost savings. They wanted to lower their energy bills. Since the movement of the last 2 or 3 years, that has changed somewhat. And actually, we are finding more and more businesses driven, as Nina suggested, by the principles of the business owner or by just a desire to do something positive towards climate action, are coming to us with ideas that may not be cost saving for them. They may cost a lot of money. They may not see any payback in their 5-year or 10-year plan, but they will see the benefits in terms of reducing their carbon emissions. And that's now a new motivation. So a business can walk away at this point. They don't have to do anything else. They've got a free report that helps them understand what their roadmap to net zero might be, or certainly a roadmap towards their obvious carbon savings. But many of them then want to apply for a grant. 30% going towards any changes that they make, and that's up to a cost per business of about £60,000 at the moment. So there's some fairly hefty grants still available for businesses wanting to make significant changes. So at the point at which they make those changes, install them, get those carbon savings realized, and make real concrete changes, we then will pay them the grant after they've cleared that. So that's basically the two halves to the program that we deliver for a business. I'll give you a couple of insights that we've got in recent years just before I sort of close. We have achieved quite broad coverage across the county with this program. As I say, we've worked with about 300 businesses thus far. 100 of those, no, I tell a lie, 95 of those are in Stroud District. So we could do with another 5 to get you over the 100. So if you know 5 that we haven't worked with, then do try and encourage them. We want to get over 100. So we've had quite a spread across the county, and in terms of where those are coming from, there's quite a decent spread actually across sectors as well. So we're not just working with one type of organization. As you can see, the bigger slices of that pie are going to the local community organization sector, the manufacturing sector, and the hospitality sector. And that's partly because of the size of those industries, I suppose, but it's also partly because of the way that they use energy or the access that they have to capital, that or the lack of access, more at the point, they have to capital to make changes that they want to make. So just to give you a little sense of where these carbon savings are happening from the 300 businesses that we've worked with, we have, as you can see, quite staggeringly, obviously, it might feel a bit obvious, but manufacturing stand to make the biggest carbon savings per improvement that we see them make. And that's because they're responsible for the biggest chunk of carbon emissions. These are our biggest emitters. And so as a result, changes can be made that will swiftly reduce that to quite a degree. So we do focus quite heavily on supporting the manufacturing industry to do that, because we want to see the biggest carbon savings for our county as we possibly can. Just in terms of what people are changing or what businesses are changing, this is an interest. I'll try and explain it. I know it looks complicated. Basically, we are seeing that there's 2 things happening here. You can see along the top, we've got the different sectors. Along the side, we've got, these are the top 10 improvements that businesses have been making. And there's quite a close correlation between what a business wants to do and what they want to improve and what their business is, which means that there is a business case for a lot of these improvements. So if you're in the hospitality sector, you're going to change the catering equipment. You're going to switch from gas hobs to induction catering equipment, for instance, because that will not only save you the most in terms of carbon and in energy and therefore money, but it will also improve the working conditions for your kitchen staff. It will make your kitchen operations far more efficient. And then the second one, of course, in there is lighting for the hospitality sector, because that's where their public sit. That's where if they're a hotel, they've got lighting on the whole way across the hotel, all the time. So these are things that not only improve their carbon emissions by reducing them, but they also improve the business experience as well. Manufacturers, as you can see, have got a lot of roof space quite a lot of the time. They love a solar PV array on the roof. For one thing, it's not very disruptive to put solar on the roof, and also they're extremely heavy energy users. So whatever they can generate on site will offset some of the costs associated with what they have to draw from the grid. So it's just quite an interesting way of looking at it. Now, there are a few case studies. I won't go into detail with these, we haven't got time. But they range, of course, the businesses we work with range from very, very small organizations who have quite modest improvements that they make. This is Cotswold Riding for the Disabled. They're based up at the racecourse in Cheltenham. They had some lighting done, and they had some partitions put in to help stop the leakage of heat from their sort of office area into what, as you can see, is rather a large sort of shed barn. And effectively the savings that they made on their energy as a result financially helped them pay for the upkeep of a horse. It's not a metric that we use often in our line of work, but it's helped them to be able to offset some of those costs, which for a charity like them, of course, are considerable, and help more people as a result who are going through therapy through their very unique therapy sessions. But we also have lots and lots, especially in Stroud District. Actually, you guys love a pub, and we have worked with dozens of Stroud District pubs to do very similar situations. Like Often, as I said, it's catering equipment or it's the restaurant area. Sometimes it's refrigeration and it's the cellar. And it's why are you refrigerating a cellar when 6 months of the year it's cold outside, and actually you could do that passively. And of course, there are those bigger engineering firms, as I say, who love to put a bit of solar on the roof and get 43 grand's worth of help towards doing that by being part of our absolutely free program. So it's easy to make that a convincer. So just by way of how businesses get involved, and I would really encourage, if any of you are associated with any businesses that haven't been a part of Target 2030 so far, encourage them to do so while the time is there, because although our program officially finishes in not quite 18 months time, our money and our grant funding is very likely to run out ahead of that. So it is a first come, first served situation at this point. Please do get people to sign up. But effectively, head over to target2030.co.uk. There's all the information that you need on there and the ability to contact us. There's also a step-by-step client guide on how you might benefit from this program. Or you just get in touch with me. I'll make an introduction with one of our business energy advisors, and we'll get businesses on the road to this service. But the bottom line is that Target 2030 is absolutely free to businesses that qualify within Gloucestershire, and the target and the grant funding that's available, 30%, is often a massive incentive to actually practically doing something towards reducing the energy use and reducing the carbon footprint of these businesses. And even if they don't go that far, they come out with a free report, recommendations, and something that they can use as a roadmap for the future as and when they choose to make those improvements. Thanks very much for listening. Questions, I think, to me and Nina are following this, isn't it, Fred?
That's right. Well, I don't believe it. Surely there must be a question or two. So we'll start with Jane Robertson from Barclay CAN. Jane, welcome.
Hiya, thank you. That was very interesting. A question for Nina, I think, really. If we have a business in our area, will they know about Business West? How are they how would we let them know, and how would they sort of find out?
Okay, so we've got a director that looks after the Gloucestershire area, so the Chamber of Commerce, is Ian Mean. But anyone who wants to come to Business West, I can put we have our employees are based right across the southwest, and I can put our contact details in the chat for you. So it's I'll put our web address down. I'll also put down our social media handles as well, because it depends on how they might want to engage. I've got to say that a lot of our climate work tends to go on to our West of England initiative handles at the moment. There's just the volume is going a little bit more on there, so I'll add those up as well for you, Jane. But and we've got a trading to net zero hub as well, so I'll add all of those contacts in there for you, and hopefully once people land on that page, it's pretty self-explanatory then.
Brilliant. Thank you.
We'll circulate those details as well. So Richard Erskine from Nailsworth CAN is next.
Yeah, I think potentially a question for both of you. I did put something in chat, but I mean, a lot of businesses, and that includes, for example, some of those businesses that were on Jen's Green Directory, the Green Directory she presented on, don't own the buildings, or they're leasing them. And often, if you have a conversation about, heat loss and stuff like that with them, they'll be saying, well, I don't own the building, there's little I can do about it. So obviously you need to get to the leaseholders and the people who actually own the buildings. And I just wondered whether you'd made any progress on that front, and how that fitted in with things like this grant scheme.
Yeah, I can jump in on that one, if that's all right, Nina.
You go first.
Yeah, so that's a really valid question, Richard, and it's a tricky one. We work with a lot of we do work with property developers quite often, or we work with the leaseholders. There is a limited amount of physical changes that can be made often by a business that's just renting a space within somebody else's property. And there's a separate question in the chat as well. I missed who it was from. Stonehouse Climate Action, whoever you are. It's very, very difficult to be able to serve some businesses thoroughly when they can't make change, or they haven't got the power to make those changes themselves to that building. And that's where having a good relationship with the landlord, or having a good relationship with those property owners, is really, really important. There's certain things that we can change, but those fabric changes have to be permanent. So we must fund things that cannot then be taken out and moved away and put in somebody's home. We do have to work on physical changes that are physically to a building. So as far as our program goes, we can still provide some advice on what they might want to use. We can still provide some advice, the service that helps them understand their energy use and helps them to make no cost and low cost changes that might involve putting timers into things or controls on things that help them to use less energy in the way that, and the manner in which they use their energy. But physical changes to the buildings are much more difficult, certainly through the grant funding scheme that we run anyway.
Yeah. The challenge that you put there about engaging with landlords came up quite frequently in our survey as being one of the main barriers. And it's interesting, this week during COP, I took part in a round table with lots of developers. So the feedback there is that, you know, there is far more, the demand for net zero buildings and workplaces now totally exceeds what's available on the market. And in actual fact, there isn't a net zero standard yet for the commercial buildings. And the Green Building Organisation, they were there. So there is work happening on creating a standard. So this is for new developments. But I also put it in the chat, it's something, you know, by working with lots of different sectors like this, you know, I did learn that there is going to be a change to the minimum energy efficiency standards of commercially let buildings. There will, of course, be lots of emissions and things like that, because I haven't had a chance to look into detail, but it does look as though things will change, and there'll be far more of a driver for those landlords to make those buildings more efficient in the future.
Richard, I've just done a quick look at my list actually of who we've worked with within Stroud District. The biggest grant recipient within the district is a property developer. The biggest grant that we've paid out so far is somebody who owns office spaces, and so yeah, there's definitely appetite within those types of businesses to be making changes, and they will, as Nina says, become quite a field of competition very soon.
Yeah, just to follow up, I mean, Simon mentioned the Better Building Partnership, and actually the CEO just lives just up the road from me. She gave to give a talk to us a couple of years ago. But yeah, for the bigger in London now, the whole performance thing is, you know, they're driving that forward so that when you hand over a building, you've got to prove its energy performance and everything like that. And that hasn't filtered down, I think, to the kind of smaller retail sector. So I think we kind of need someone to join the dots here. I don't think it's really happening yet, but someone needs to. Yeah.
Okay, somebody else with a question, perhaps somebody who hasn't had an opportunity to talk into the meeting at this point, but would like to do so. Anybody?
There's a couple of questions in the chat, Fred.
Okay.
If I can pick up one, if that's all right. Simon says, and I don't know why I'm picking this one because, and I didn't mean to say Simon says, I don't know why I'm picking this one because it's a question that's quite a tricky one to answer. But James, have we worked with very small mobile businesses such as builders, landscape gardeners, plumbers, electricians, etc., of which there are many in the area? And of course, we know 99% of businesses in the UK, let alone in Stroud, are micro businesses, very small businesses, just like this. Similar to my last to my last answer, I suppose, to Richard. Yes, we've worked with a few of these, but it's quite tricky to identify. We have to work on business premises. Okay, so we can't work on a domestic property. So if you are a business that works out of, you're a one-man band, you work at home, and you've got, you know, your man with a van type situation, we're not able to work on properties that are both domestic and commercial. It has to be a commercial property. A couple of times, actually, we have worked with organisations who, a lot of the time, they're mobile, but they've got they want to switch to an EV fleet or something like that. Now, we struggle to finance a shift to EV, but we can, in terms of the actual vehicles themselves, but we have worked a number of times with businesses to put in EV charging, which enables, because that's a physical on-premises item that we can fund, and that helps them to provide that to their staff, sometimes to provide a fleet, so there are things that we can do, but it's trickier to work with those one-man bands with no sort of commercial premises to work on.
Thank you for that, James. Okay, any other questions?
If I just build on what James has said there, I just put 2 links in the chats of sort of these ideas of these 26 different things a business can do to reach net zero, 26 things you can do to protect nature. And, for those micro businesses, it's really thinking about what is within where your most significant impacts are, and what is within your control as well. So do take a look at some of those ideas, or do you look at what the groups in Nailsworth are doing and think about what is it that you are able to adopt within your own organisation, because it's, that move to net zero, it is about buildings, but it's also about how do you work with your supply chains, what products and services are you putting on the market. So do have a look at some of those and see if any of those might work for your organisation or business.
Thank you, Nina. James, you mentioned that the programme was coming to an end. Are there any possible opportunities for alternative funding sources to continue something similar that might come to fruition?
Yeah, it may look very different. So it's tricky to be able to make strong and confident claims at this point. The UK government are looking to replace the funding that we've had from the EU for many years with a different type of funding, similar sorts of purpose towards the funding. It's the pilot that they're currently rolling out is the UK Community Renewal Fund, which is sort of touted as perhaps being the replacement for some of that EU funding that we've been used to certainly in sustainability sector for many years. But that's just in a pilot phase at the moment. They're testing it out, and they're testing out various projects that might attract that, and seeing whether they can find a model that works. They're trying a few things, and it's challenging. I'm just going to leave it there. But in terms of alternative funding for businesses like this, we may be looking at alternative models of funding, and it may be old faithful things like 0% loan finance, green loan finance, green investment type stuff. There's a few different financial models that we may go down to help businesses to make these improvements, but that will be there if grant funding is not there. And most businesses still struggle to take on risk at this point of any kind, and are quite risk averse when it comes to finances. So it remains to be seen whether or not loan options are going to be as popular. They won't be as popular, but whether they will be popular enough to get most businesses on the road towards reducing their carbon emissions. But we have to look at that as an option for the future if grant funding is to evaporate and the UK government don't put anything similar in place for whatever reason.
I think it's going to be really interesting as well, seeing what's commitments. A lot of the banks are making big commitments on helping on financing that transition to net zero. And I think it's going to be really interesting when we actually look into the detail of what they are offering. Is it the same standard terms, or are they willing to take more risks? And how they're going to be doing that. So I think I feel it's a little bit early to have done that, to do that assessment, but I think it's going to be quite interesting to see if they are going to step into that space and really offer that help to help companies finance that change without the grants, because the grants have been incredible, haven't they? I think for just taking that risk out and getting businesses to actually make that investment.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Nina and James, for your contributions. That's been extremely interesting and useful. You're most welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting should you want to, but we would understand if you want to sign off having fulfilled your roles for tonight. So thank you very much, James and Nina. Okay, so we're moving to that part of the meeting which is about updates and news. And I shall run through some updates and then hand over briefly to Kelly Osbourne, who's going to spend a few minutes letting us know about her new role at the County Council as a Sustainability and Engagement Officer. And if anybody else has any news or update that they would like to share, either use the hands up icon or pop the information into chat. That would be great. So I'll kick us off then by starting with reference to the survey that was circulated a month or two ago, which we asked local groups to complete about their activities and the network support that we seek to provide. First thing to say, I think, is a profound thanks to all of you who completed the survey. I realise it was a real commitment of time and effort, so we're very grateful to those of you who completed the survey. We had 15 responses from 12 local CANs, and we have prepared an overview of the findings, which we'll make available hopefully by the end of this week, along with a brief paper of headline findings. I just want to give you a flavour of some of the findings that we've received and how we're hoping to respond. And I mentioned 3. There was strong support across CANs for a 6-monthly or annual face-to-face get-together to share experiences, successes and learning. And so we hope to start working on putting on an event of that nature for the first half of 2022, was the first headline. Secondly, the survey findings revealed, or highlighted, I should say, the importance and the challenges of recruiting and retaining active volunteers to increase local group capability and capacity. There is some guidance from Friends of the Earth on just that, which is very useful, which I will recirculate to groups, but we also think it would be well worth running some form of online session on that, so groups are enabled to focus in a bit on the specific issue of volunteer recruitment and retention to increase capacity. And the third one I wanted to mention was that there was a widespread desire expressed through the survey returns for groups to be able to better engage a wider range of groups, including on the part of some groups, hard to reach communities. And so we'll have a look at best practice on that with a view to advice and guidance, and perhaps also a briefing session on that. And there's work taking place in various parts of the country with harder to reach groups, which we can perhaps draw on and utilise. So that's sort of a bit of a glimpse of some of the survey findings and the way that we hope to be able to respond. And thank you again for everybody who completed that survey. The second thing I wanted to mention was the Community Engagement Board. At the last meeting of the forum, we heard from Georgia and Rachel from the District Council about the nature of the Community the Community Engagement Board and the recruitment campaign that was about to start. That has now started, recruitment is underway. and the council is looking for candidates who have reach and influence in their local community, stakeholder or professional networks. So if you do know people who are in that position and can contribute as volunteers to the work of the Community Engagement Board, please do encourage them to make an application. The recruitment pack and application form are on the District Council website, and the closing date for applications is midnight on December the 1st. Well, that's the Community Engagement Board. And then also perhaps to mention a couple of electric vehicle related updates. We have had further discussion with Co-Cars about establishing an electric car club in Stroud District, and the focus is now very much on finding suitable sites for a pilot scheme. So we hope to be able to report more on that over the coming months. Secondly, to mention that Greg McCormick from Painswick CAN has prepared a proposal for a community EV chargers in a car park in Painswick, and he's made that proposal available. And I think it's probably worth making that available to groups. So if you are interested in the process through which you put together a case for a community EV charger installation, it'll be useful to have a look at Greg's proposal and learn from that. So we'll make that available. And finally, before bringing in Kelly, I just wanted to mention that a week ago today, I attended a parish council meeting in Nimsfield, and the meeting had been convened by the parish council to ask local residents whether they wanted to form a climate action group. And I'm pleased to say that on a very foggy evening in Nimsfield, 25 sturdy and hearty local residents came out and agreed that a climate action group should be set up. So hopefully there'll be a new group in Nimsfield forming over the coming months. Over to you, Kelly. Thank you for coming to the meeting. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please give us a bit of detail about your new role and your priorities.
Thank you, Fred, and thank you very much for having me. So as you said, my name is Kelly Osbourne, and I've just started as Sustainability and Engagement Officer for Gloucestershire County Council. So it's a brand new role. The council haven't had it before, and it's split between the waste team and the newly formed sustainability team there. So until recently, they only had 2 people within the council working on sustainability directly. Obviously, there's lots of other links, but we're in the process of recruiting, and we'll have a team of 6 very shortly. All of us have started in the last month or so, so we're still very new on the ground. And I should say while I'm here, if anyone knows of anyone who may be interested in a tree project officer position, we're currently recruiting for that, so do point them towards the GCC jobs website. So my role is all about community engagement in terms of sustainability. So it's getting people involved, finding out what's going on in local communities. My plans for the first 6 months of my role are going to be primarily focused on stakeholder mapping. So coming out to events like this, talking to people, finding out what the council can do to help support you guys, and also talking about what we've already done. So I think the council has done quite a lot, and we're not very good at communicating that. So something that I'm going to be working on is how we communicate in the future. I'm also working on community engagement planning, looking at monitoring how effective campaigns are within the council, so that we can show that the kind of money that we put into campaigning around sustainability and waste issues is well spent. And we're looking to identify more funding. So that's my role. I was going to talk a little bit more generally about GCC's climate action. Fred, if that's something you haven't heard about before.
I think people are broadly familiar with the county's strategy, but haven't heard about the detail of how it's planned to be delivered.
Okay. Well, I can just talk you through quickly, and there might be some gaps there just because obviously I am new, but so at the moment we're reviewing what our action plan is going to look like, and we'll be putting forward the any changes that are going to be going forward from there. So what we're looking towards for next year, we've set up a new group within Leadership Gloucestershire, which brings together lots of the strategic groups, and that's solely going to be focused on climate change. So we've got some meetings in the diary for Leadership Gloucestershire just to talk about climate change now, which is a great step. You're probably familiar with the 1 million trees pledge that we have in place, so that's still going on. We also have a £1 million action fund that's going towards air quality around school streets. A little bit of it's going to staffing, some of it's going to trees, and also some of it will be available in community grants in the future. We've got energy investment funds for public sector organisations. We have the Climate Change Youth Panel, which again, I'm sure you guys are probably very familiar with. We are currently reviewing local transport plans. I believe there was a consultation that was delayed after COVID, but the results of that should be out fairly soon. We've got electric vehicle charge points that are out to tender at the moment. We're working on some retrofitting and public building improvements, and also cycle lane improvements and extensions. So I hope that's news to some of you, but if anyone has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Thank you, Kelly. Any questions for Kelly? Perhaps I should say that if you do have information that you wish to see circulated to local climate networks and climate action groups in the Stroud district, please do shove them my way and we'll get that material out, including, for example, the tree officer recruitment, which we can put round to groups. Any quick questions for Kelly? Adrian asks, any news on the contract for real-time bus stop information, please, Kelly? I understand it was out to, a bit restricted in my hand movements because I got a broken bone in my right hand. So
I can have a look. Yes.
Oh yes, I understand it was out to contract. That's from Adrian.
I'm not sure. Is that the sort of on-demand bus? Adrian.
Are you there, Adrian? Can you come in?
Yeah. Hi, Kelly. No, it's, I mean, information on the on-demand bus would be great, but this is the bus stop notifications, you know, how long you've got to wait for your next bus.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure at the moment, Adrian, but I can get back to you. I can have a talk with my colleagues and find out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, well, if there are no further questions, oh, Richard, sorry, I missed you. Come in, Richard, from Nailsworth Climate Action Network.
Yeah, Kelly, I'm not expecting an answer now, but just to flag up, I mean, obviously, Stroud District Council have had a strategy, and now they've got an action plan with, I forget how many, something like 74, isn't it? Streams of action or whatever down at the detailed level. But I suppose for those of us that are already reading too many documents, it would be really nice sometime to sort of clarify, you know, where the county is acting and working and where the district is, so we can have a better understanding, which we can communicate very clearly to people. And, you know, we could try and do that, but it'd be a lot better, I suppose, if those that are working for the respective councils can put together a very clear communication on who's doing what, if you like.
No, that sounds brilliant. I'm yet to go to one of the CN 2030 groups, which is where the districts and the county council meet and discuss who's doing what. So I will get some more information about that, and then perhaps I'll pass that on to Fred and we can either discuss or...
That would be helpful. Thank you very much, Kelly. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to make an announcement about news or an update of an activity before we close the meeting? I see no hands going up. I think we're probably at the stage where we're able to close the meeting then. We're just a word on next date of next meeting. We've got 24th of January earmarked for the next meeting. Topic as yet undecided, but as you will have heard from the review of the survey returns, there are several topics which might sometime form suitable subject for a briefing session. One is on building capacity of groups, retaining volunteers. Another is reaching wider groups. It may also be timely to talk about heat strategy and different options for renewable heat in domestic properties. So we'll communicate over the coming weeks about the topic for the next meeting, but we've earmarked January the 24th. So I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance. I'd particularly like to thank our speakers and wish everybody a pleasant rest of your evening. Thank you very much for attending. Take care now.